Hello, hello. We're back for another week.
Welcome.
Scott, you look different today.
I know. I use a new product for my hair and it's just like it looks different.
So to everyone that was expecting to see Scott, I'm afraid he can't make it today. He's not very well.
Yeah.
So he's off sick today. But please keep your questions coming in. There's been plenty of questions and use the hashtag Humpday Q&A in the chat and on your tweets and everywhere else. So we've got some. we're going to go through the beginning bit here and introduce ourselves. So let's do that now.
Yes. Do you want me to do the introduction for you?
Introduce yourself, Mariam.
Sure. Hi everyone. My name is Mariano. I'm a Google expert for Flutter and Dart. I'm also a tech lead for a couple of companies. I mostly do Android/Flutter. So I'll say half a day. My day is half Android, half Flutter. I do enjoy more Flutter, so don't worry for everyone.
I was going to say, soon you're going to get rid of the Android and just be Flutter only, right?
Yes, it will be Flutter only. Hopefully, it will be Flutter only soon, but I need to pay the bills, so.
Right. And my name is Simon Lightfoot, Flutter community lead, and I'm also sitting at Dev Angels, small developer agency in London, and you can get all of us on these links, Dev Angels London, Geek NZ, and we're going to have Mariam. Okay, I'm not going to try pronouncing the last name, and I'm going to ask her to tell me.
I can do it. Mariam
Hasnany. Go for it.
There you go.
Right.
Mariam Hasnany.
Yeah, no chance. Okay, product owner / product manager of Flutter Web at Google, and you can follow her at that same address on Twitter. So we have a few do's and don'ts during the stream. Mariano?
Yes. Sure. Be nice. Be respectful. Everyone in the chat, please. Don't be rude. Don't post anything appropriated. Don't publish your questions over and over again. That's to get us a spam. We saw your questions, but we're doing part of the live stream. We're going to grab them and we're going to show them on the screen. So just post it once and we're going to see it. Again, don't be mean. Don't be disrespectful. Just enjoy the chat and enjoy the live stream as well. And everyone will enjoy as well.
Thanks very much. I think we're trying to still work on the format of the show. And for the moment, we're just going to be doing having a Googler perhaps or someone from the community that we're going to interview at least at the beginning, and then we'll follow on with questions and Q&A, and hopefully we'll get some more community members on to do a bit of a panel at the end of the show. The plan going forward is to also do maybe some live coding, some demos, that kind of thing, and we'd love to do some presentations as well, maybe some short 15-minute presentations from the community. So please reach out. You can find us on the Flutter community Twitter account. And we'll see where we go from there. Without any further ado, Mariam, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
You're more than welcome. So it's quite early there in the morning. You're in Mountain View, I assume.
Yes, like 9 a.m. or?
It is 9 a.m. I am in Seattle.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
A little bit far away.
Yeah, just north of Mountain View. Before COVID and everything, I did get a chance to go down to Mountain View a few times to actually see the whole team. But I sit in Seattle, and I sit mostly with the Dart team, so I get to bother them a lot.
I'm assuming you've got Kevin's ear then all the time.
Yep.
Whenever there's a bug, Kevin, why is this?
Yep.
Yeah. Or it's in my DMs when we like announcing stuff and doing like events and cool Flutter Web stuff. So I speak with Mariam a lot.
So I'm kind of curious. So there's I remember. I want to talk a bit about the history of Flutter Web. So it was. I know you might not have been around for all of it, but so I remember when it first came out. It was Humming. It was called Hummingbird.
Yes, Hummingbird. Yes.
And that was late 2019.
Announced in Google I/O 2019.
Yeah.
It was. It was announced as Flutter Web during that, but it was Hummingbird just before that, wasn't it? And it was done in. Was it Flutter? Was it called Flutter? The first one, Flutter. No, not Flutter Interact. Flutter Live.
It was Flutter Live. Yeah.
Yeah. The one in London.
Just Flutter
Oh,
Live.
so do I. Hey, it's over there.
December 2018. Yes.
Yeah. And yeah, and I was privileged to kind of get early access at that point to play around with it, and that kind of the idea of essentially changing the engine part of the code base and swapping that out for something that builds the DOM tree is a really interesting paradigm that, you know, Flutter gives us that capability. So that's really amazing.
Yeah, so the history does start there, I guess, for the community, but I think for Eric Seidel, like the history of web has been around for him forever. And so like Flutter's inception came while he was on the Chrome team, and the idea of Flutter and just the experiments that he started doing were based off his own experience using the web and what he was trying to build. And yeah, everything really started with his own web experience, and then it's kind of just taken its own and gone towards mobile, and now we're just seeing if we can bring it back and make the same impact on the web platform.
Yeah.
I suppose I was going to say it's a natural progression, though, isn't it? From it was Dart. Dart was originally built in that sort of web fashion at the very, very beginning, and then Sky soon came out after that, I believe. So it's kind of that natural progression to where we are now.
Yeah, the idea of Dart was going to be the replacement for JavaScript, so it was web oriented. If I'm correct, is it at worst the website built on Flutter Web, or am I completely incorrect in that one? I know that some product inside Google was done with it's not Flutter, it was Dart-ish or with Dart years ago.
Yeah, so like we say that Google Ads uses Dart, and so like internally there's a lot of products that use Dart, not exactly like they use the language, they don't exactly use the framework.
Yeah.
So I think it was Angular Dart was one of the internal propositions that's used, I believe, for a lot of the control panel stuff, but I don't know. I'm not inside. Caveat here.
Yeah.
So it's been awesome at Flutter Engage to kind of get the announcement of where Flutter Web is now. Can you speak a bit more about that? Like where you kind of what's happened during that time that was in beta? Is there any big revelations you've had?
Yeah, so I guess it was I joined, just for my background, I joined right before we went to beta. So in between the time of technical preview, when we were like, okay, we have this thing, let's see if it can become a thing. And we released a technical preview, and we heard a lot of people loud and clear that this was something they might want. So we were working towards, okay, how do we get it in a state that we can at least have people not just on the master channel experiment with it and really tell us. The reason of going to beta was really to understand what is the use case of this, what are the features that we should focus on, and really get to people that do want to use this eventually in production. And so my job coming in was figuring out who our lead adopters were and figuring out what they were looking for in terms of this product. So a lot of my answers won't be very techy, it will be very PME. But yeah, so in terms of that, it was we worked towards Flutter Interact, and so that's where I was, and I think I met Mariano and a few other folks there in the community, and we got to beta, and we knew the next step was obviously stable, and everyone, that was like the biggest #1 question I got on all the blogs. Every time I talked to the community, it was, when do you go to stable? And stable for us wasn't just, hey, we put it on the stable channel and it's ready for you to use for production apps. It was more so, hey, can we actually support people building production apps? Do we have the test infrastructure in place? It was getting a lot of that we've already built over the years for Flutter Mobile in place for web. And because it's a separate engine, we have to write different tests. We have to write different automated tests. We have an entire different semantic node tree we use for accessibility. We have a lot of differences, but at the same time, it's the framework is all the same for you. It's just the engine that actually transpiles it into JavaScript so that it can run in the browser is what we've been working on from beta to stable. And during that time, it was also deciding, do we want one renderer? Do we want two renderers? We were experimenting with CanvasKit when we launched beta. And we had a lot of early adopters actually asking for CanvasKit and using CanvasKit because of what they were doing. I mean, Rive was one of our biggest early adopters, so that was a lot of the influence there. And we had a lot of other apps such as, like, I don't know if you've seen Easy A and like other apps that are coming out that wanted to be able to draw on the canvas, right? And so we knew the limitations we had with HTML and the DOM elements that we were able to work with, and the Canvas APIs and the CSS APIs that we had. And so CanvasKit, working closely with the CanvasKit team, is a partnership that we slowly built, and then we were able to really work with them and build out this rendering engine that we have now. And it's still a work in progress. So us going to stable, it's V1. We see this as like our MVP, and we see this as hopefully there is enough for you to actually go to production with. And what we're hoping to do now is exactly what we've done for mobile over the years, is really polish and really get performance really crisp and getting you all the features that you expect for not just Flutter, but for also for web. And so we will get there.
I mean, it is definitely a different value proposition from a developer perspective, and in terms of, you know, like there's a different interface. Hovering, for example, is obviously a new thing that's come in place. Scroll bars really taking front and center. Being able to resize the viewport is another interesting paradigm that people are now dealing with now that Flutter Web is stable. I know when I first played around with it, there was you got the DOM renderer, as you said, the dual things. There's the DOM one, you got the CanvasKit one, and there was kind of a transition where it was like using CanvasKit or CSS Kit or something like that for the text. Was it for measuring the text? Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah. Yes. So during beta, we knew that text has always been the biggest challenge for us on the engine side, and so really getting to the point where we knew exactly where the cursor was in your text and being able to select exactly what you're highlighting and doing those interactions, but also being able to show you the text properly. And so we realized the original way we had it for HTML was good, but the performance wasn't there. And so an engineer on our team, Mauad, he found the Canvas API, and he was able to do some experiments and realized that we use the Canvas measurement APIs across both the HTML and CanvasKit. And so he basically came up with a solution that made it, I think he measured it and it was like 6 times faster. Don't quote me on that. I have to go look it up. But yeah, it was just like we saw significant improvement. And so it was things like that that we were working on from beta to stable to really like go dive deeper and figure out what can we leverage from the existing amazing web platform that exists today. What can we leverage that is already there to really make Flutter succeed as well?
So, Mariano, I'm kind of curious. So you've had some experience with Flutter Web. What has been your experience?
Well, I started since when they gave in the announcement, the Google I/O 2019. The first thing that I do was like, what can I do with it? I remember doing like a small game that I ported to everything: Android, iOS, Mac OS, and website. That was the first thing that I did. But back in the day, people don't know, you have 2 separate projects. You couldn't have at the same time. So either you needed to do web or you do mobile. So I couldn't have even the same repo as well, because there was like so many nuances, differences and stuff. Until like, I can't remember exactly the version, but it was in the point where they switched. You even have to use a specific material. It was Flutter _web material kind of thing instead of like Flutter material for the packages. And it was like right now it doesn't feel like it's ready to use in a lot of stuff, but I try to use it anyway just to prove that it was feasible to do like even games or things like that. No, not just applications. As soon as it was merged and I can have it in the same projects, what I did is have a specific flavors. So what I do is maybe I have an app and the backend or / dashboard, you name it, it was done in Flutter Web. So what I do is I either compile locally or create it on Firebase hosting, and it gets /admin thing, and I can access there and control my app as I use this Firebase. Because at the beginning, also Firebase wasn't really properly done. There's a lot of issues as well. If you don't use the specific version on the web, it was going to crash until that was fixed as well. Eventually, it was like a year ago or something like that. Can't remember, it was a long time ago. And then new stuff came out like the TarPad, and then we started like doing the Copan that we did last year. We did a lot of examples for that one, and that was like truly showing the things that you were able to do with Flutter Web.
Were these the mock-ups you were doing of like fake Netflix?
Exactly.
Fake
yes. Because even you can even install them if you are in an HTTPS. You can install as a web app, so as a PWA. And when you install that way, you can even get access to the media player. So I can reproduce, do a play in an audio, and you got a media player showing up with all the
nice.
Like the art and the title and all the stuff. And I was like, and I'm doing it in Copan. I'm not even compiling on Android Studio VS Code. So I was like, if it works this good here, compiling fully, it was like way better. My own website is built on Flutter Web, so the ones that I have with all my social medias completely done in Flutter Web. What else did I have? I got it, all the examples that I do in Copan. I also has been done on Flutter Web as well, and those are more like a look and feel as a web app, not as a website, which is different. I say that if you want a more behavior as a website, you need to think about scrolling. You need to think about sections and I don't know, privacy policy, this kind of stuff that you don't think about normally in an app because you got an entry point and you move your way into the settings. And a website you can land as a deep linking kind of thing, but all the time because you got all these different paths that you can go.
Well, this is one of the things I remember early on. I did a different URL strategy to remove the hash, right? Because it was a big deal at the very beginning. I know that's now been released. I don't know where that is at right now. I haven't looked into it. But that's a big proposition in terms of a lot of developers are used to building a mobile app where the routes are just internal, right? No one sees the routes, they're just internal. Now you need to structure your routes in a way that makes sense for a URL. So that's a different thought pattern you have to get to when working on it. We did the hackathon, the Flutter hackathon last year. We did the website and the entire sort of way of what do you call it?
The whole competition and
the competition people whatever. We're submitting all through the web interface. We're all using Flutter Web and forms and everything, and we're doing validation and pop-ups and all sorts of things. And it was a very interesting experience. I think for me there was we found two big things for us was the notion of because it uses PWA and it uses the
service
worker.
Yes.
Then you need to do the I think there's a real need to have a part of Flutter is to have the upgrade feature. So that you just have a stream from the system platform, right? Whereas he goes, there's a newer version. So you pop up with a dialogue in your Flutter app and say, yes, I want to restart, and it will reload the web service worker and restart the web page, refresh it. And then that way you're kind of getting that new new content because that can hang around after 2 refreshes otherwise it gets a bit buggy.
Yeah.
So we have a fix for that coming out.
Ooh.
Yeah.
The other one that
we have the inside scoop.
Did it really big was the what's called the GDG, the Google developer communities. The last year, because the whole situation worldwide, we link up with all the Latin America teams, and we did like a huge one. And the website and the app were all only done on Flutter Web and, of course, in native for the apps in the store. But the website, if you see on the website as a more like desktop feeling, you got the scrolling thing, you got the different sections and stuff. And when you're on a mobile, you got more like an app experience, if you want to call it. And we just measure the difference and stuff and checking if we're actually having more measure as a device, or checking the user agent if it's an Android, iOS, and we can tell it's like, okay, show this UI or show this other UI. For a lot of people who don't know, they think of like, okay, Flutter Web, then I do everything on Dart and Flutter. Yes and no, because you still have an HTML. So you can still do a lot of stuff that you can do on a website, like having your manifest for the PWA, adding descriptions, install buttons, and user agents. You can even put Google Maps as a JavaScript thing.
This is the one thing that people don't. It's not just Flutter Web. It's Dart based on the web. So you're getting the Dart HTML, you're getting the Dart WebGL, you're getting all the Dart features from the Dart language that already support web. And you can use those, and specifically part of that is the interoperability between Dart and JavaScript. It's very important. It means that you can use any JavaScript libraries with Flutter Web, and I think that's a key point. And there is I think I need to ask Kevin if about this. There was a package facade generator, JS facade generator. Anyway, it generates the Dart wrappers for the JavaScript files, so that if you have TypeScript definitions, it will generate a Dart compatible definition that you can just use inside your Dart to work with them.
Yeah, I believe that's the case. But Kevin would know best. At least I'm hearing you guys say the web app and the website. And so like, I know in my blog, and I feel like I'm a broken record, but I mean, you can definitely use it for websites, right? Like there's nothing stopping you, but other than the fact that you will run into issues and you will see more of a lag and some jank if you're going to use a lot of static content and build like New York Times with it. And so I think our best proposition right now and where we stand is for web apps and building those things that really will function as somebody logs into this thing and they have their own standalone app that they're using, because we don't have SEO either. And, you know, for those things, I still recommend, like the web platform is amazing. You should still use the web platform. And so
I think one of the biggest valuable things that I have from Flutter Web is sharing apps on iOS. Why? Because the app process in iOS is a pain. It's so painful. It takes a lot of time. You need the provisional profiles. You need to set up the emails and so on, just to show an MVP of your app. If you do the PWA Flutter Web version of it, boom, you send the URL and the user on an iPhone and an iPad can use it quickly. And you don't waste a lot of time.
As I said, then you get sign off and then you release it to the app stores.
But yeah, it's like every time that I have a client with an iPhone, it says, there you go, that's the URL. Try it, and it's way better.
I think we should open the floor up. We've been talking a long time. I think we should open the floor up to some questions from our audience. So if you have a question, please post it with the hashtag, as always, hashtag Humpday Q&A. We're going to go to the comments now and see what we got. Let's have a look through. Oh, actually, that is something that was
asked a lot. Yes,
is asked a lot. Is about the hot reload and hot restart. What is the situation with that at the moment?
That's a great question. It was actually a question in the Q&A for Engage, but we never got to it. So
tell us.
So hot reload is a feature that we came out with for Flutter, and it's basically we came out with it because we knew it was lacking in the mobile development world, right? But when you do web development, I mean, web development's pretty quick as it is. You can refresh your browser and get your latest. And so as we were thinking about Flutter Web, we knew that with hot reload, you get stateful like you can restart your app and you keep the state that you're in. And while we don't have that for Flutter Web right now, what we do have is hot restart, which basically is the same exact mechanism that hot reload uses. It just removes your state for now. And that is because we're still trying to figure out how to make it work well with the browser and what the browser already does. and I'm sure you can ask Kevin a little bit more because we do depend on Dart Web to get there. But there is an issue open in GitHub, and I think what we're looking for users from now and from you all as developers is really like, what is the best use case for this on the web and why you really, really need it? Because if you're really thinking about web development, hot restart is what you already have. It's like the baseline, right? And so to really get to hot reload is a lot of work for us. And so we want to know exactly, do we need to prioritize this over every other feature that you're asking us for Flutter Web? And is hot restart enough? Or is hot restart not working? We have a hot restart, and is something breaking that it's completely breaking your developer experience?
I tell you what, the feedback I get, I think it's just the unexpectedness because everyone's used to hot reload right now, right? So I kind of feel that that if there was a workaround that developers could put up with, right? So not just like the restart on the web page, but I'm thinking like take all that state, dump it into like local storage, and then retrieve it back again once the page reloads, right? That kind of just. It's not really a stable solution. It's maybe not be the best solution. However, if it just works right now, because hot reload is only used during development, it's kind of people can deal with that. And if it breaks something, hot reload. You can get around that. So I think that's key. I think that kind of
that's fair. I think some of the workarounds I've seen is because we're a multi-platform framework. You could run it in desktop and see what it would look like in the web.
This is what we do, yeah.
And so as desktop is maturing, hopefully you'll have all the plugins, and so there won't be as much discrepancy between web and desktop. And the web will only get stronger as desktop matures as well, because we use the same idioms in terms of scrolling and mouse and keyboard.
That's what I say is like, if you're going to use an app that it looks the same on mobile that on web, even have it on an Android or something like that. It's just at least like the general scope. If you're going to have like a more app look and feel, try it on the phone. Use the whole reload and all the stuff. If you're going to have like a more website-ish look and feel, do it on the desktop one and try it. And to be honest, unless you really wanted to check small little details also and stuff, it's not hard to press Command R and see the difference. Maybe you have to go through the flow, or having your name routes and just go / whatever, like ID and the ID and go there. It's easier that way. I use that way because I fetch the information that way. And I don't use like the regular more app approach of I need to click here, I get this information from here, then I go there and fetch again or whatever, and I pass the information through the navigator. What I do is like, if I have a URL that it says ID / a random numbers and stuff, I take that information because it's most likely to be, for example, I don't know, like a UID for Firebase. I get that information and then I fetch Firebase and then I use it. So it's more independent. Each of my screens are completely independent. I can open from everywhere and they always request the information.
That is actually the nature of doing a website. That's very different from an app, right? You have that URL. That's a very big proposition. We had another question here from John. Mentioned EVA. What is that? Did you say EVA? I don't know.
I don't know if I did.
Or PWA.
Maybe it's PWA.
Are they confused? I don't know.
Probably.
I can't remember that you mentioned EVA.
Or was it MVP or version 1? I'm trying to think of all the times I used the letter V.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
I'm sorry. I tend to mumble when I talk fast, so definitely let me know.
Are there a lot of apps that have to run on all platforms, mobile and web? Did you guys do a project that needed all platforms? I think maybe, is that directed? I don't know if that's directed.
I guess Google.
To everyone
in general. Yeah.
So I think I could take a stab at just like from a Google. I mean, internally we do have a lot of apps that are looking into web now that we have it in stable. And I think the proposition there is not just, I mean, Google, if you think about it, like when I use Google Calendar, you have that everywhere, right? And it's on the mobile, it's on the web, it's on desktop, it's on tablet. And so there are a lot of apps out there. But I think main proposition that we heard from a lot of our early adopters is if we get web stable, we'll be able to have one team working on everything instead of having a lot of different teams working focused on web, focused on iOS, focused on Android. And so that was really the proposition there.
I think this also kind of brought up a question, which was actually has been asked a few times of me, and that is, I don't know if you know, there's K is web. It's this constant that you can use to say I'm running in web mode in your Flutter code, and you can make a decision maybe to change your UI or behavior and so on. There's also a question around, am I running in desktop or mobile version of web? And I think we don't really have that right now, but I know you can use your user agent to like say, oh, is it running on, it's got the word mobile in the user agent, and maybe that's a key that you could work with. I wonder if that's also something that you guys have been looking at internally. Is there anything about the difference? And I know you said that you're using was it Canvas Kit or DOM renderer, depending on mobile or desktop. Desktop uses Canvas Kit, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is there any other differences? I'm just kind of curious.
I mean, we don't really see any differences because it's transpiling to JavaScript at the end of the day, and so it's producing the same code.
Whatever you can do in JavaScript, you can.
Yeah, and so we don't see a big difference in terms of the browser, except for the fact that you need to probably responsiveness, right? And so I think in terms of using K as web, I think that came out early on because we needed a way for you to probably segment out your Dart.io and your plugins when you were first developing, because we didn't have a lot of those supported. The way I've seen K as web used now is with like deferred loading, which you can do on the web and not on mobile.
So this kind of leads into this one, right?
Question. Yeah.
What does the roadmap look like for bringing the build process, which we see on a large web projects such as code bundle splitting? And I know we can do deferred imports, which, as far as I understand, generates 2 different JS files, 2 different JavaScript files, so that helps break it up a bit. I mean, I did see this when I tried web, that there is a big initial JavaScript download for the browser because it does contain like a lot of code there. Is there any plans for roadmap for breaking up the code a bit more or making it more accessible?
Not currently. I think for us, because we're so focused on the app scenario right now, for us as an app, like you want everything at once. And if you are deferred loading, it's usually those really big assets and libraries that you don't need initially. And so that's why we have the deferred imports there. This is something that's coming up, and we are seeing issues. So we are starting to have discussions, but I don't have a good answer right now.
That's no problem. Stefan seems to have sort of clarified his question.
Oh, okay.
Is it possible to code the client app in mobile and the backend dashboard in Flutter Web so that the dashboard is not reachable for the client? Sorry for my bad English. Yes, in short. So the thing is, you can either run the Flutter Web app locally on a local web server on your computer. So that would mean it's not reachable by the client, but it can be used by the web. Alternatively, you can just build a website, just deploy it as a website that you log into before you get into your web app proposition. So yeah, you can segment the 2 bits. And in fact, I think this is a perfect example of where Flutter Web is going to be important in mobile space, right? For that scenario of administration over applications.
Yep. Matter of fact, I used it this week for that specific reason. I have a client that it's like imagine like a pseudo chat app when you can find people, but they're traveling to the same place. So if you're from, for example, I'm from Argentina and I'm going to the US, I wanted to find people who are going to the same place so we can chat about it. And they have one specific countries because they only have like a list of 10 of each countries, and not every like 200 scroll in until you find it. So they want like 10 specific countries that are going to be on the top and then split it on the bottom. It's like, how do I make it simple for them and for me to just toggle whatever countries? And I pretty much did that. I did a small backend-ish Flutter Web website, which was super simple to do. and they can just easily click and super simple. No changes, just a toggle, and that's it. It's working real time updates on Firebase, and in the app you see right away. So that's a really, really good use case. And if you want to run locally, the client never gets to reach that information. Or you can have like a private also website, or they only runs on your IP address. There you go. You can look it that way as well if you wanted.
We've also seen a use case where you have different users. It's not just like admin versus client. Yeah. It's tutors versus students versus parents. And so they share some of the same UI and some of the same code, but they have different portals and different features and functionalities. Right. And so we've seen there is an app out there, and it's called Easy A. So you can probably reach out on. I'm sure you can find him on Twitter. But he has the 3 different, and like he uses web for 2 of them, and mobile only for the student, and so that's what I've also seen as a great use case for web, is being able to segment some of the UI, share the same code, but also have your own portal of something else.
You know which one also is a great use case for Flutter Web? A lot of people in the past, when the Flutter native apps were a little bit heavy and they couldn't support what is called the instant run or the install apps for the Android, now they're like a 50 megabytes. So it's a little bit better. There's no issues now.
Is it 50 now? No
15.
way.
15 megabytes.
Okay, 15.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 15. It used to be 4 in the past. It used to be 4
I know, right?
megabytes.
Then it went to 8 and then 10 and now 15.
Yes. So when like first started, it was like 5 megabytes or something on Flutter. It's like, hey, I cannot have this feature. But you can think about Flutter Webs as maybe showing a snippet of your app and kind of like saying, if you want the full experience, just show it a pop-up. You can identify the user agent and you can send it out to the Play Store or the App Store to have the full experience. So if a lot of people want to do like a small screen, small section, maybe if you had a social media only showing one comment,
limited part of the app,
yes,
and then
exactly.
like an instant app, I
don't know, Vimeo or other platforms that you can only show a video and that's it. And if you want to either write comments or see more videos, you just click on it, you jump into the Play Store, you install it, and you're good to go. So I think that's a really also a good use case for the app of like using it as an instant run thing, pretty much.
Yeah, so, get your reach out to more users.
Yes.
Because everyone has the internet.
Yeah.
I've got a quick question here. This is also part of this one here. Shader mask class doesn't work on web. I have seen it somewhat work. So there is a question around here. What is the compatibility like? Because I know that as you spoke earlier, there's certain features that we get from a Canvas kit that you can't do with the DOM. And I know that probably shader mask is one of those where it would work on Canvas kit, but it might not work on the DOM system. Is there a list at all that people can see about what features are different between the two right now?
That is a great ask. There is no list, but I have it on my to-do list to work with our DevRel team to kind of put something together. I don't think we're trying to make that much of a difference. So we are trying to keep as we implement something for one renderer, it's the same engine, so we're trying to find ways to do it for both. So because we have relationships with the Chrome team, there are conversations that we can try to get that working. For shader mask specifically, I don't think we have it for either well. I know that we have some fixes and PRs that we just pushed. And so if you follow GitHub closely, you could probably see exactly what we do have and what we don't. And so, the reason we don't have this list of like showing you the difference is we're constantly working on these things. And so it would be a lot of overhead to constantly update as soon as we push a PR.
I think it would be good. Sorry, my feedback is it would be good to have something, since we now have a stable, right? Just to see from that stable point where it is at. Obviously not up to date. I get that. But yeah, I think because there is that proposition when it is this should work. Why isn't this not working? And there's no clear definition because it's like just a no operation. Like it just magically does nothing. Like it's very silent. And I've seen that a few times. So I think that it would be good to kind of make sure that those little issues are resolved, at least from a point of view of informing.
Yeah, that's a great point. yeah, we will look into that. I like that idea.
I got one that I noticed, and this is like free.
This is now rant time. I'm just conscious of the time, and I just wanted to get a few more last questions in from the audience.
Sure.
And then I know, Miriam, you're going to have to head off. So let's see what we can get here. Any last questions?
I saw one really good that it was like related to scrolling on website, that it says, why Flutter Web scrolling is not smooth? Any suggestions? I will say that a lot of people use the single child scroll view for everything. It's like, no, that loads everything on memory.
Yeah,
don't use that.
List view.
I will mention one other thing. When you're, as far as I remember from when I last used them, Miriam, please tell me if I'm wrong, but when you're developing, you're still using the DOM. Is it developing? You now use DOM on desktop, or does it use Canvas Kit on desktop when you're developing?
It uses Canvas Kit on desktop.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then you might find there's better performance, at least when developing, but obviously you're in that debug mode. So
yes.
Run your code before you start complaining about scrolling performance. Run your code in release mode,
yep.
And then look at it on your destination sort of desktop and mobile device and see what the performance is like there. Because during development, I'm working with things, they're all a bit janky, but when you release into production, perfect.
Yes. A lot of people don't know that. They can just literally say Flutter Run Web / release. And there you go. You got the better experience of it. But again, most of the issues, because I go through, it's like, what's the easy way to scroll on the website? Oh yeah, single child scroll view. Don't. Because again, like every single it doesn't matter if it's Android, it doesn't matter if it's iOS native, it doesn't matter if it's Flutter. That single thing loads everything on RAM and memory. And on the web, we're really used to a lot of images and a lot of components and stuff more than what we have on mobile. That we're more conscious about doing more minimalistic things and doing SVGs and all the stuff. If you don't do it, it's going to go slow no matter what you do because you're not using the proper widgets for it.
So here's another question from John.
Mm-hmm.
Are there performance penalties when compiling to JavaScript? Will desktop apps be faster than web apps? I mean,
so I'm going to leave the compiling question for Kevin because he can definitely answer that really well.
Fact,
I do have to run, but
I think we have a Kevin here. Hang on. There he is. Hey, Kevin.
Buen dia.
Buenos dias.
Kevin, I'm leaving you with this great question about compiling.
That sounds wonderful.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you so much.
And thank you for having me. It was great. I would love to do it again anytime.
Please.
Miriam, I'm just up the street here in Seattle, so I feel close to you. But
oh yeah, I can hear you from across the hall.
See you again.
Have a great night, great morning, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you for coming. Bye.
There you go. How's it going, Kevin?
Kevin, welcome back. It's good to have you.
I had so much fun last time. I did a StreamYard thing just because I was like, I want to try this again. So I did some live coding. This is a great platform.
It was the you did some office hours, right?
Yeah, and I did some JSON serializable hacking, and I fixed some bugs, and I realized that I don't know if StreamYard is good. 720p is not quite high enough resolution.
We have 1080p, so I can offer
because
you
you're paying.
Right now on live stream, I will offer this. You don't have to accept right now. You can use the Flutter Community YouTube channel, which has 1080p StreamYard. So
yeah,
if you want to, you
stream to all the community.
If I want to fix bugs for the folks, okay, I'll take that.
Exactly.
So yeah. So are there any performance penalties when transpiling to JavaScript? Will desktop apps be fast?
It is a real compile. So this is my understanding. You should really have Bob on. He would know this.
Oh yeah, Nitron. Yeah.
Transpile is just naively going for loop, variable, and try,
one to one.
We compile to the web. So we do loop unwinding, we do tree shaking, we do
all these
constant
compiler
evaluation.
things.
We do all the real things. So
constant. Was it constant propagation as well, and all these other wonderful things.
So we treat JavaScript like a compilation target. I mean, think of what ASM.js did before there was WASM, right? Not quite at that level. I mean, they're dealing with bits and bytes. We use the strings and the numbers and things that are provided on the web. But really, we consider it more like a compilation target.
So regarding the question, I for me personally, I think the desktop approach for me feels quicker, because once you compile your app to the first time, you're then just, when you upload your Java, new Dart code, it's just JIT compiling as it runs it, which for me feels a lot quicker than doing the transpile to JS and then compile to JS and then running it, and then running it in the browser.
But honestly, it's just the layers, right? So I mean, the web, they've done spectacular work making the web super fast, but you still have another layer of a layer in between layer, because we're compiling JavaScript, then you hand it over to the browser, Chrome, whatever, and that's doing another compile from the JavaScript down to native code, and there's a little bit of loss there. So I mean, the web stuff's super fast, but you probably will get better performance with a native app on the desktop. But what's great is, for so many scenarios, the delta doesn't matter, right? In theory, Gmail will be much faster as a native client, but if the difference is between 3 milliseconds and 5 milliseconds, like the fact that I have it in the browser and I don't have to install patches and just hit reload, like
that is true.
So,
Actually, that's another question. We're not going to answer that today, but what it is to like do the remote compiling and shipping of updates, right? So like, what do we call that?
Code push.
Code push, yeah. So you compile your code and then you push it to the app as almost like an update, right? Which I know that there's limited ability on iOS because they restrict that a bit. But on the desktop side, that's a very interesting proposition, because it means that you could pop up with an update dialog in Flutter and just be like yes, and then it just reloads, and then you get in your.
I mean, we need to spend more time there, because I don't know enough about exactly what the bundle is that goes into a desktop app. And we've talked a little bit before about how you can use AOT compilation even for servers in Dart. So you can turn a 700 megabyte Docker image into 11 megabytes by using AOT. It's pretty cool. And what's cool about Dart, at least when you have the full stack there, is you can actually spin up an isolate with a string. You can just pass it in a data URI.
Yeah.
So instead of saying, here's a URI to where the Dart code lives, you can say, here's a URI with the Dart code in it. I mean, this is how some websites do small images. They actually encode them in a URI. So we can spin up an isolate with just a string of text. And so in theory, you could have completely dynamic implication of about anything. And of course, there's security implications there.
Yeah, right. Yes. Oh, we're going to have JavaScript eval problems again.
Yeah, like it's not quite the level of eval, but you kind of start getting there. But in theory, you have a lot more flexibility on the desktop. Yep.
I do know that when you compile AOT for server side, and if it's just Dart code, not talking about Flutter here, just talking about Dart code, that it compiles to a shared object or dynamic library essentially, and then that is attached to the AOT runtime, and that's shipped together as the binary, the final executable.
That sounds, I believe that. That sounds believable, yeah.
I actually had to write some code to actually replicate that process for another reason. Anyway.
Okay, yeah. You might know more than I do.
But it's kind of interesting because that it might mean that you can ship that bit separately. But obviously, when you go with Flutter, now you're bundling assets. There's another proposition about how that all comes together, which I have no knowledge about, at least not right now. So I've got a question here that what about SEO and Flutter websites? How to make the best decisions? I have a Randall.
Hey.
Gosh, welcome to the stream. You've been doing SEO on Flutter Web. I know that you have. Tell us about it.
Well, I actually have a proof of concept right now that I'm really wanting to explore further, except my SEO knowledge is limited. But my theory was, is there a way to hook in to changing your navigator URL and having that attack the top of your page, your head of your page, to insert the proper title and the proper meta description for that particular page? And I have done it. I've successfully done it. So I hook into the router, and I get callbacks when that happens. And I immediately go in and use the Dart HTML DOM manipulation to basically insert what I want for title and meta description. And it's repeatable. It actually recognizes that it's already been there before, so it knows not to do it twice.
I think
it's very slick. And I want to carry this further forward, but I'd like to be working with some people at Google about this for sure. Or if anybody's already working on this, I'd like to work with them. And also, what What else needs to be done for SEO, like the maps, making the links very observable to the crawler, things like that?
So,
Sorry,
oh no, you're fine. I know a little bit here. So so Randall, that approach, what's interesting there is you have to think like the crawler. And I have a little bit of experience here, and it's
So
actually.
I just want to caveat something, Kevin, because we did some research on this.
You need a sitemap as well.
For Vue.js, was it Vue.js did a lot of, there's some background research anyway, and it's about the fact that now Google recommends that you can use JavaScript to dynamically generate your content, and the crawler will capture it.
Mm-hmm.
So previously that wasn't the case, but I do know that there's a time delay, and if your content's not, your DOM tree is not modified by this time delay, which is arbitrary by the sounds of what I've been reading, that it will then capture the right tags, and it will know about what your SEO tags are and so on for that page. But SEO is like the mysterious black art, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's so. I am far enough away from that team at Google is that I might as well not be at Google. Right. And honestly, I kind of like it that way. Like we don't. I can bother people on chat, right? If I can find their email address, but it's like there's no special, and that's what you want, right? You want it to be,
them doing their thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So a couple things there. So one, my understanding currently, you might actually have more recent information than I do. My understanding is, at least initially, it just goes off and does it does a get on the URI, it gets the information back, and so even the simple things around. Making sure that the static content that's loaded when that URI is hit is the right content. I mean, and there's lots of websites that do this trick, right? Where they'll use URL rewriting in page as you navigate around. But the URI you hit, like the response you get back from the server when you hit /A/B/C, whatever that is, the content that comes over the wire is the content you want it indexed, Because I think it will try to run JavaScript and do it, but I think it's a second pass, and there's a bunch of caveats there. And so we actually had this for a while with our documentation site. We use Angular for our Angular Dart for our documentation, and it's completely dynamic. I mean, all sorts of SEO problems. Now, again, this was over 5 years ago, 6 years ago now, and I know it's much better. But what you want is a situation where whatever URL you hit, you want the content that comes over the wire, at least in theory, to the content you want. And of course, this can be a problem for completely dynamic sites. And now there are tricks you can do at the server, and you can wire this together. And I can imagine solutions here. I have
pre-rendered server-side HTML, yeah.
Or just pre-rendered server-side headers. So you still load the app, and the app still wakes up and sees the URL and renders what you want. But you want the meta tags and the titles and all that stuff to be rendered correctly. And then once you're in the site and navigating around, I mean, you can set this up with Firebase. Yeah, you can make it. You'd have to do it server-side dynamic. Be a good demo to do. You'd want to make sure that the app still works normally, but the metadata that comes across is what you want. Again, my big recommendation to most folks. Let me get on my soapbox just a second. My big recommendation for most folks, I think of Mint.com. I think of Fidelity. There's all these experiences that you have where when you go to Fidelity.com or WellsFargo.com or Mint or for some reason I can only think of financial ones. Even Starbucks, right? Like they have a whole website where it's your order experience and all that. That's not the homepage of Starbucks.com. They have it normal HTML that has all the data in there, and it's highly crawlable. And then once you get into these app experiences, whether it's ordering or managing your portfolio or sending transfers, that's your data. They don't care about SEO. Like there's no SEO on my Gmail inbox, right? And so that's really my point to people. Like landing pages. Make that. Just use the HTML is amazing. That's great. Use HTML for the landing page.
You know what? I think a lot of people asked a lot of that question. They most likely wanted to do something like WordPress or Blogspot kind of thing, and they wanted to have like a specific newsletter, or maybe they have in their own blog, like posting about development, and wanting to do that in Flutter Web. And they really need that SEO for that one, because if not, then it's not reachable for that content that they just created. And yeah,
I'm gonna just bring up something that this is some of the research that we were doing at the time. Let me make this bigger for everyone. Oops, maybe too big.
yeah.
So So this is basically saying they no longer recommend Ajax crossing proposal. This was in 2015. So this is the previous proposal around how they do this. It literally just says here, times have changed today. You're no longer blocking Googlebot from crawling your JavaScript or CSS files. You can generally able to render and understand your web pages like modern browsers. To reflect this improvement, we've updated our things. The assumptions are you're going to use, for example, the push state API and various new principles. So they actually do recognize the sort of the way. I mean, this is what Flutter does, push state. So Flutter Web. So yeah.
And I think the trick. So I think this is where the difference is, and we should be transparent about it. So if you're more like React or Angular JS or those types of sites, even if you load if you curl against HTML, there may be zero readable content there. Eventually, you'll end up with a normal DOM with H tags and paragraphs and everything else. That's crawlable. We know that the content that you get, you do not get DOMs, and I guess you might get some divs, I guess, paragraph tags. I'm not sure. Mariam knows more about this than I do. But you don't get all those things with Flutter Web because of the way we treat the DOM. We treat the DOM like a rendering service. And
yeah, well, that's why my hook hooks right in right after the router change, because I never see the flash of the wrong title as I'm bouncing back and forth between pages. I know it's happening so early that it has to be the page that the crawler will see. And I walk through all the diagrams that Google presents about doing this correctly in terms of crawlable. Then you need links from there, and those all get queued as well. And then, but before it gets crawled for all the content, that goes through a JavaScript renderer engine first. And that's what I think I'm hooking into. I'm able to hook into is that step.
That's great. I would love to see the code. That's
well,
cool.
is there anybody downstream from you that's working on that at Google? I'm sure there is, right?
I don't.
And by Google, I mean the Flutter team, not Google crawlers. We're spending a lot of time. The big thing is just these performance cliffs where we know the text is an issue, where there's rendering issues. Yeah. That's where we're spending most of our time. I know the guys in the JavaScript team are spending time on segmenting up, because we do support what's it called, deferred loading in JavaScript. Okay.
And so we're spending time making sure that we have a smarter way to handle deferred loading. So if you have an app that has kind of big sections, we can send those pieces down independently. As far as I know, there's nothing specific about SEO we're working on now, for the reasons I mentioned before. We are very focused on app experiences. And so I know that if you're like, oh, I don't have to use HTML anymore, I can do my blog in Flutter Web.
Yeah.
It works, and it probably looks beautiful. But if you want the full experience on SEO and everything, we are not the tool yet for there. We might get there eventually. Like there's, who knows? It would be.
But like WordPress has been doing it for years.
Yeah, exactly.
We're trying to focus on the things that we do really well and enable our experiences.
I know we're trying to move on, but I just want to say I'll publish my proof of concept probably in the next week or two, and you guys can take a look at it, or somebody can take a look, or I'll file a bug that says, "Look at this."
So I do want to mention this one, and there is a bit of confusion. Does someone have to take into account special code, how they code a Flutter website for SEO optimized and accessible for blind people? So accessibility on web, as far as I understand it, Flutter Web from day one has been accessibility has been a priority. Do you know anything about this, Kevin? If you don't, that's fine.
I'm not the best person to ask. My information is needed here. My understanding is they did do the work to expose the right accessibility points in the web, so that things like navigation and there's basically hookable APIs on the browser that support this. It's actually interesting because to support accessibility, it gets heavier because basically there's kind of an opt-in way to do it, because to put all the nodes that the accessibility software looks for, it adds a lot of weight to the page just to give it the little hooks that it needs to find things. But my understanding is it works. It's been worked from day one. I don't have details though, so hit me up on Twitter. I'm happy to go digging. Hit our Mariam and I up on Twitter. We're happy to go digging for you.
So yeah, as far as I know, it's been around for a long time. I haven't personally had a need to try it, so it'd be good though to get some feedback. And if you in the community, if you want to try something, write an article, publish it. There's lots of ways of sharing that knowledge. Are there any basic differences between the HTML renderer and the CamSkit renderer, pros and cons? So as far as I understand it, and I'm just going to answer this one, as far as I understand it, the HTML renderer is maybe, is more performant on a mobile device, whereas the CamSkit one is more performant on a desktop environment. So the two devices have different propositions in terms of power and battery usage and so on and so forth, right? So the fact that you have to render every pixel on a canvas kit is a slightly higher battery usage and various other things in performance than it would be, on a mobile device. So that's why they've gone sort of, as far as I understand, that's how they've gone with the direction of having two. Those kind of issues where there's just, it makes sense to do that. But as we spoke about earlier, if you can go back in the video, they're going to look at maybe publishing a list of those differences just to make sure that developers are aware of what might come from that.
And my understanding was a couple things. That's right. And my understanding is the Canvas kit bits just leverage the GPU a lot more. And so if you have a beefier GPU on a desktop machine, you have a better performance experience. And the other thing too is, I think my understanding of the split is that you have to download the Canvas kit, which is, it's so funny. I talked about this last year, or when we launched this initially. We're just trying to get back to Skia, and Skia is in the browser. Like that's our home. That's mom. Is Skia, but the browser doesn't expose Skia APIs.
It needs to expose the entire thing just for WebAssembly or something like that, right? Just the raw APIs.
Who knows? We'll probably get there or something like it. But so it's funny that we have to download this massive code that's basically the layer to expose the layer that already exists through the API that exists. That's my understanding. And so that's a big hit if you're mobile in the true sense, right, out and about. And so that's another reason. It's like we don't want to give mobile users having to go get the download that whole big Canvas kit WASM bundle.
I really like this. Thank you. I really appreciate the hard work you put into Flutter and Dart. I especially like type safety. There you go.
Thank you so much, John. I love type safety too. That's why.
Null safety as well now, right? So it's always a bonus.
I'm loving the null safety stuff.
I think one of the things that I like a lot about Flutter Web is the fact that a lot of mobile developers don't want to do websites, and now they can feel like they're building an app and actually building a website. As the thing that, like, the fear of the mobile developers, like, I'm not going to handle 1,000 frameworks in order to do this, and actually start understanding the web. And they're like, wait, I maybe can do this on Vue.js or like React or Angular or whatever, but given the start with Flutter. And that's like a good thing, because I've been doing a lot more web stuff only for Flutter, pretty much. If it wasn't for it, I don't think I will touch it.
Well, there's like there's just all these experiences that just are like, my nirvana now is developing with the desktop support just because it's so fast, and then deploy the web. Like I was playing games with my kids, and they want to play games, and we get them writing games, and so like, we should do an RPG, and like I found that RPG framework that exists. Someone's working on it. I need to send them some pull requests. I sent them already some pull requests to clean some stuff up. They need tests. But like, they have like a whole RPG framework that works, and it's great on the web. It's a great experience on the web. Yeah.
Yep.
Are there any plans to bring isolate support to Flutter Web?
This is actually hilarious because I am the person responsible for taking isolates away from the web.
Great kind of question.
Evil.
For a very good reason. The folks that initially started out, they had it's Google, right? Very audacious plan, and they're like, we should do asynchrony and do it in a way that works the same everywhere. And so they did some web service, very early web service, web worker work, and it just was an insanely leaky abstraction. We had completely inconsistent behavior between desktop and web. We added a crazy amount of overhead to any app because you have to have like the machinery in place even if you don't use it. And so there's a crazy amount of machinery required to support it. And it just didn't have the semantics that people expected, right? Because you can't send arbitrary objects over. So what I can say, though, and if you're, again, well, we talked about this briefly last week, I think, around the isolate work. Like, they're doing a bunch of work to drastically improve isolates on the native side, because you can. So 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 that's great. And those are kinds of things that you can't necessarily. There's no easy way to map it directly to the web. Something that has been on our list, on my personal list for a very long time. It's just a matter of ordering right now. It's seriously just, we don't have infinite engineers. We have finite engineers and families and kids and other things going on. I do aspire to give better support for web worker, service worker, and offer ways that you can easily layer on top of those things. I aspire to enable some of that, but it's just going to take time. So I feel the pain.
Well,
there.
I do hope. No. Yeah, we're not going to blame you for anything because you've done awesome work with your team so far in Dart. So phenomenal. I do hope that now, like the null safety stuff is kind of taking the back seat now, and that's kind of out the door. I'm hoping that we're going to start seeing some really nice changes. I do know that I heard, who was it, that we're going to be getting type aliases very soon. I think it was Dart 213 or something.
Yes.
There's a few things. And triple shift, which someone still has not explained to me what it is. It's 3 arrows, and it does something very important with numbers.
Bit rotation, right?
Yes, something like that.
That's why normally triple arrows is bit rotation. So one bit drops off the end of the number and comes in on the start.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's important.
Which is very important for compression and other things. It comes in very handy.
There you go.
So for speed, if you can get the net, love it.
So we're currently in Seattle. We need to get back to Canada. We're living in Canada right now to be close to my mother-in-law. And so I need to get on the road because we need to deal with the border and everything else. And getting back into Canada is way more work than getting back into the States. So sorry for jumping out.
No. Thank you for dropping by.
Thank you.
Unexpected. Thank you.
And you can use the live stream.
I got my shot yesterday. So Team Moderna, everyone get your shot when you can, please.
Yeah, I had my shot as well.
All right.
So yeah.
Hugs to my friends in Argentina.
Yes. Gracias.
Eat some helado for me. We'll talk soon. I'll take you up on that next time I do a Q&A.
Yeah, and you're welcome back anytime as well, by the way, on the community channel, and welcome to do your office house here as well. So
yes,
okay.
You can use the live stream for that.
All right, take care of yourselves.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Kevin. Cool.
That was nice. Yeah. So we're going to be wrapping it up soon. It's going to be a short one today because we went over last week. I'm curious. I don't want the stream to go
almost
too long.
3 hours last one. Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite long.
It felt like forever. Yes.
Yeah, I saw a couple of questions that I saw, or not really regarding. But
okay, how about this one?
Yeah.
Why Sliver app bar doesn't work properly on Flutter Web? What is the problem? It worked for me last time I used it. I didn't have any problems with it, so maybe try with the latest. I'll do Flutter upgrade and try with the latest.
Or make an issue. Make an issue if it doesn't work. If you can make a minimum reproducible sample, file an issue because these guys want to know what to work on, and if something's broken for you, they want to know.
They can then prioritize that work. If people find that lots of people are having the issue, they will prioritize that and get it fixed.
Yeah.
Also, if you make an issue, someone from the community might go, "Oh, I know what that bug is. I can probably fix that." And they'll fix it.
Yeah.
That's a great watering hole.
If there's no visibility, if there's no issue ticks, no visibility, we don't see it. That's how simple it becomes.
Yep. Highly recommend.
There's other thing that we didn't tackle that I saw on the questions before related to cores. They one says that it didn't work with Canvas Kit. Canvas Kit doesn't have anything related to the cores issues. That's a web thing. It's to avoid other websites to access other websites. If you want to, sorry.
No, I was going to say, regarding this question, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. I'm trying to get through a bunch of questions here.
Yes.
How do I make Flutter websites for blind people? We spoke about this a bit earlier. It should work. There shouldn't be anything special you need to do because it hooks into the browser's accessibility. But if you're having problems, submit an issue.
But you should be looking at semantic and its subclasses. Those are the things that some of the widgets automatically add some things from that. But if you want to precisely control when and where and how, look at semantic and their subsets.
Yeah, there is actually another one. There is actually another accessibility service. I forget the exact name of it, but it lets you speak out loud and do a few other things with accessibility.
Yeah.
really can help as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that'll read
if you're
that
making-
stuff out loud.
If you're making custom controls, then you can take advantage of those things. But if you're just trying to have read out stuff from text, semantics has a title, I think it's a label parameter, which you just put your text in, and then it has like, is it a button? And then it will say button, okay, and it'll read that out for the
Yeah,
for
and
the
on a
whiteboard.
scrolling, on a vertical scroll, it will actually
Yeah.
tell you you're at item 14 of 200 in the spoken words.
And there is actually, it's very important. There is actually a thing for that in list view and sliver view where you can enable this, add semantic indexes.
Yes.
There's also, if you want to know, that there's also a trick you can do with that, and that is because it adds the indexes to each item. You can say scroll the scroll to index kind of feature can kind of work around that. We won't go into that right now. So what else do we have here?
It was a question regarding the user agent, I think. Yes, that one. I use that one.
Yeah.
It's really easy. You can detect from the HTML one. You can go do window, the user agent, and then you kind of do like an if thing, if Android, if iOS, if iPad, all the stuff. You can check all those stuff. If Windows, Mac, whatever.
I will put a link to the field that we've been talking about. It's navigator.useragent.
Yes.
That's the link to the Dart development API.
You might have to do document.navigator. I don't think navigator is exposed as the top level variable. I think it's
look at the best thing here, right? Is Dart HTML replicates exactly what's accessible through JavaScript. So if you see some JavaScript, you can do that with Dart HTML. So it's a one-to-one. Well, they try and make it a one-to-one wherever possible. So names are slightly different, but yeah. So aim for that sort of thing. Yeah, I think you're right. It's window.navigator.class or window. Something like that.
Platform. I think it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
People will find it. People will find it.
Something like that.
So, really thanks.
Somebody asked about layout. I don't know if you want to take the layout question.
Oh, we talked about that one in the previous one related to responsive design.
Yeah. Okay.
This is interesting. I do want to see more people doing Flutter Web, and so awesome. How can I make a responsive application? We hear this one quite often.
I think that was it.
The widget you're looking for is Layout Builder, which is a common one, and that allows you to get the constraints from your parent and say, oh, it says constraints max width will be however many density independent pixels dips that you get from your logical pixels. They're also called logical pixels, and you can say, oh, well, if it's this big, then do this. If it's this big, do that. And there is a brilliant
and very important on the web. It also will rebuild all the dependent children, because if you resize your screen, you want it to act differently now because you're wider on the screen.
Yeah, you can do the layout builder and also match it with the case web. So if you are on the web, you can do a specific stuff on web with these specific constraints. If you're not, that means that you're most likely to be in a desktop app or something like that. And again, you can check the platform is desktop. Someone asked it, is it platform is Android? That doesn't work on web because you are on web. So case web is the one that is going to tell you it's case web. If you put it that platform is Android, it's not going to be Android. It's going to be web. So you don't have that. If you're on the web and you want to check if it's Android, if it's iOS and all the stuff, use the user agent. That's the one that is going to give you where are you running on the web.
Because actually, I was just trying to find it. There is actually an Android developer documentation for building for multiple screen sizes, and it actually has it has a really interesting graph supporting different screens. I might have just found it. Hang on, hang on. Yes, I think this is it. This is it. Let me share the screen here. It's just so I can and I'll put the URL in the chat in just a second. So I'll put this in the chat for everyone. So there's this page, and this goes through the importance of how you do flexible layouts. Now, this is particularly talking about how you do this with widgets from Android. However, the principles also apply to Flutter and to iOS and everything, right? So so down here, create alternative layouts, how you might do that. There's some interesting thing. They talk about these typical font sizes. Now, this 320 dp, that's literally what we get in Flutter. It's as the size of a widget. So if it's 320 wide, it's a typical phone screen. If it's 480, it's a large phone screen. If it's 600, it's a small tablet, and if it's 720, it's a large one. And this little graphic that they show here,
historically, even in Android, the way that it take if you're running on a tablet was literally check if you have more than 600 dp or something like that. It's like, there you go, there's a tablet. So it's not even on mobile has been an easy way to say this is a tablet.
Yeah. So this supporting different screen sizes, all these different bits of information it gives you on the web page.
Yes.
This it's all still valid, and you can you won't be using the technical ways of them doing it, but the principles that they talk about and these breakpoints and how they work is definitely applies to how you do it in Flutter. And so layout builder. I do really want to put this out there right now. Don't just put media query of size, width of the screen divided by number everywhere in your code, right?
Oh, no.
Avoid that as much as possible.
So if you suddenly go to tablet down, you want to put your thing on it's now sized to the entire screen. It doesn't make it feels like it makes sense, but more to the problem, when you put that into a browser or desktop, as soon as you resize, every widget that you put media query of size now rebuilds because you're changing the size of the screen.
Yeah.
And because you're changing the size of the entire screen, every widget gets rebuilt and then laid out and then painted again. Whereas if you use Layout Builder, the actual it's happening during the layout and build at the same time. It's a bit more efficient, but even better, there is custom single child scroll view, custom multi-child, custom what's it called? Layout, custom custom single child layout and custom multi-child layout. These two widgets, I think we can find the documentation put in the chat. Custom single child layout, custom multi-child layout, and they allow you to do the layout during the layout period. So that's after build takes place, then it lays out the widgets on the screen, and then it paints them. These are the three stages of the pipeline. Right. It's very important. You do it during layout, and no widgets get rebuilt. So you save a lot on performance from that, just doing that alone.
The other thing important about Layout Builder is it's giving you the actual space you have left. If you have a header bar and some footer bars, if you use media query to get the height, you're getting everything all the way to the edges of the screen. That's not useful at all. You want to know how much space you have to draw in.
Is there a Flutter navigation bar which can act as a persistent navigation bar?
Persistent.
I think he means, now let me correct. If you go between screens, you want the bar to continue at the bottom of the screen. Because in Flutter, when you push onto navigate, it replaces the entire screen. Correct. And this gets people quite often. What you're looking to do is inside of your material app, there's a builder parameter. And what you can do is you can put a stack in there or a column, put your navigation there, and then you put the child as the content. And what will happen when we use that builder parameter and do that is that navigation bar, it's the child that changes it's actually the navigator that changes the content of the screen, and the navigation bar will persist when you go between screens. You can also do some tricks with like hero, so you could have the navigation have a hero which has the same ID, and because it's in the same place on the screen, it doesn't look like it moves. So it always looks like, even when the entire screen animates, the navigation bar stays
in the same. Yeah,
but it's not the best thing in the world to do. I think we're going to start wrapping it up. I don't see any more questions. Yeah, thank you for input, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to start wrapping it up. Randall, I think we're going to have to add you to the slides. You keep coming back for more.
I say I come to the ones that I can come to, and unfortunately, I've had clients that have been sort of accommodable, whatever, some word like that. Accommodating. English is so difficult for me. Yeah. So
if it's difficult for you, imagine what it's like for the foreign.
Imagine for like us that we needed to learn.
Yeah. I'm sure your Spanish is better than my Spanish, though, for sure.
Mine's terrible.
We know.
Oh, thank you. Right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And
yes, we're gonna be next week. So
we'll
hopefully have Scott back next week if we're lucky, and we'll see what we can do about some live coding. All right,
if not, I will be taking his place.
Right.
Oh yeah, man, you're welcome at any time.
Yes.
Bye for now, guys. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Everyone. Stay fluttery. Hey, Dart.